last guy that I could, so I just waited until I found a guy that I thought was worthwhile. I spent most of my time with my best friend Destiny. Me and her were really close, but I remember she almost got kind of jealous when I finally got something of a boyfriend. Me and this boy, Jake, never actually dated, but we were talking, for lack of a better term. It was one of those situations where people kind of knew that we were somewhat romantically involved. Like, we would talk on the phone at night and sometimes bring each other gifts to school, things like that. People always blew it out of proportion, but it was what it was. I remember Destiny being very disapproving of Jake. She said that he was a loser and that I could do way better than him. He definitely would have not seemed like the first guy I'd have gone after. At first, he isn't the best looking guy in the world, but I think he's really cute. Or at least I did at the time. I thought his real redeeming quality was that he was the most compassionate guy I've ever met. Unlike most guys, he actually listened to me when I spoke. I felt like he really heard me. That was of a heck of a lot more than could be said of any other guy that ever tried to date me before. And if I'm going to be honest, I felt more heard by him than anyone I'd ever met up until that point. The sad part was that Jake had quite a few issues. He wasn't just something of a loner. He also had this dark and mysterious side that I didn't really know anything about. Even to this day, I don't really know what was wrong with him. I just know that there is something about him that isn't quite right. And looking back, I was extremely naive to not have seen the signs before. He was disliked by so many people, and it wasn't like his standard reaction where people think he's awkward or something. He totally was, but there was something else that was completely off about him. Even my dog had a bad reaction when I brought him to my house one time. And as anyone should know, if a dog doesn't like you, then there is really something wrong with you. Anyway, nothing bad really happened between us until we had a field trip one day. Our entire grade was going to a theme park about 30 minutes away. It was supposed to be a really fun thing. As long as we stayed in small groups of at least 3, we could pretty much go wherever or do whatever we wanted. The idea of not having to be followed around by a teacher all day was extremely enticing. On the day of the field trip, it ended up being me and Jake and Destiny in a group of 3. He really wanted us to ditch Destiny so we could go and have some fun, but I wasn't about to do that to my best friend, nor did I really want to do anything like that with him on this field trip. Most of the day went by and it was actually pretty fun. There was one point when I had walked by a water slide. Some of the kids who were riding on it splashed some of the water and got me completely soaked.
6.
I had a spare shirt in my book bag and I went to the girls' locker room to change. But this is where things got weird. There was no one in the girls' locker room. I went in there and started to change. And then I heard someone else walk in. I just assumed it was another girl or a woman. It was a pretty crowded day after all, but no. It was Jake. He started touching me very inappropriately. I told him that I really wanted to do stuff with him, but just not under these kind of circumstances. But he wasn't getting the hint, and it really started to freak me out. I could feel it in his pants rubbing against my leg. His breath got heavier and heavier, and he got himself really worked up. Finally, I just had to yell at him to stop. I told him that he was really freaking me out, and I just got the rest of my clothes, and I walked out. But he didn't follow me. He just let me leave. I stood outside of the girls' room for a few minutes waiting for him to come out. But it was a little while before he did, probably close to 5 minutes. As you might imagine, I was not excited to go back in there and get him. Destiny also gave me a look when I came out. I told her that Jake was in there, but I didn't tell her what he was doing. She just asked why he was in the girls' locker room at all. I couldn't think of a good excuse. I didn't want to tell her that he was being a complete and total creep with me that day. Destiny was fed up because she wanted to go buy a pretzel. She knocked on the girls' locker room door and told Jake that he needed to come out right now. We stood there for a few seconds and we all heard some strange grunting noises. It was honestly really awkward, and me and Destiny just stood there and looked at each other. Jake finally made out one last grunting noise and a few seconds later walked outside. He didn't say a word. He was kind of out of breath, and it was one of the most awkward moments in my life. We told him that we were going to get a pretzel, and he just shook his head. He slowly followed behind us as we
884
made our way to the
610.
snack bar. At the time, I don't think I consciously knew it, but now that I'm a little older, I think I have a pretty good idea of what he was doing there. As you might imagine, that was the end of mine and Jake's little romance. That was the creepiest thing I've ever seen anyone do, and it was so shocking coming from him. I felt like I'd spent so much time getting to know him, only to find out that he was even creepier than all the other guys. I went to a pretty rough state school here in the UK. It was only for 3 years, as I ended up moving schools to complete my GCSEs. But it has made an impression on me, as well as leaving me with a handful of anecdotes that I don't think I'll ever get tired of telling. Most of them are pretty funny, childish antics and schoolyard gossip, that sort of thing. But one or two others tend to provoke horrified reactions from anyone I tell them to. And one of these stories is the story of when Mr. Broughton had enough. So, there was this kid in my English class called Francis, and Francis was one of those hard cases in our year group. He basically did whatever he wanted because teachers knew that it was just easier to ignore him and teach the kids who wanted teaching as opposed to rising to his bait. Try to discipline him and Francis might just decide to throw a chair or something. As you can imagine, most teachers didn't want to smoke, so Francis basically ran year 10 for a while. And it wasn't just the teachers' lives he made miserable either. Anyone who wasn't in his little circle of friends was a target for his aggression. As I'm often fond of telling people, he literally fulfilled the archaic bully stereotype of stealing people's lunch money. And it was quite a while before the school threatened to get the police involved. I think they couldn't even expel him because he'd already been expelled once, and no other school in his postcode would take him, so we were kind of legally stuck with him, I guess. And apparently, so was Mr. Broughton.
Queen 762.
Francis gave all his teachers a hard time, but Broughton was the kind of exception. You see, he was a big bloke, an ex-rugby player who tried and failed at setting up a senior rugby team when all the year 10 and 11 lads wanted to do was play football or get high. Given the chance, he'd have crushed Francis in a second. But given all the rules on how teachers couldn't touch students, Francis knew he was basically untouchable. But that didn't mean he wasn't cautious about it. Francis definitely gave Mr. Broughton an easier time than the rest, at least until the day he decided to push the envelope. So, that day we're sitting in English class and Broughton is trying with all his might to get us to read through Act 2 of A Midsummer Night's Dream. Francis is up to his usual tricks, trying to put people off reading, making silly innuendos, generally making a nuisance of himself. And Broughton starts telling him off for it. Yes, mind you, but he's still telling him to shut up and behave. Whenever anything like that happened, I just learned to zone out and let it happen. Like, as weird as it sounds, there's only so much drama you can take before student-teacher verbal confrontations just get old. So I'm not even sure how it happened, but I just heard Francis mention something about Broughton's wife. And then a big chunk of the class did like a subdued rap battle "oh" reaction, anticipating a sharp escalation. But by escalation, I purely mean verbal. There was never any chance of an actual physical fight happening, at least not between a student and teacher. That's what I thought, anyway. And that turned out to be very wrong. Usually, whenever Francis brought up something personal to do with the teacher, they had long since learned to ignore it. And the thing that really grabbed my attention here was that Broughton had most definitely not ignored it. He was looking up from his desk, redder than a beetroot, just staring at Francis after he made the comment about his wife. It wasn't even that bad, I don't think. From what I heard after, Broughton had said something about leaving the rest of us to get down to business.
7482.
And Francis had said, "Oh, just like your missus said."
Nice.
Honestly, it was still considerably less harsh than the majority of the abuse he dolled out for teachers, but still, Broughton was looking at him like he just slapped his wife in front of him. "Young man," Broughton started. His voice is literally trembling with rage. "I'm gonna give you an opportunity to apologize for your comment." Francis should have taken the chance while he still had it, but it was never like him to quit while it was ahead.
struck a nerve, have I, sir?
Francis just gloated.
He didn't recognize how serious the situation was about to get, and honestly, neither did I. I didn't expect Mr. Broughton to explode the way that he did. I didn't think he even had it in him, yet little did I know, he was about to teach Francis a lesson he'd never forget. Just apologize, Broughton said. We can leave this here. The way he said it was so seething that the whole class was silent, waiting for Francis's retort. And I remember shifting in my seat to subtly watch whatever he was about to do. I think everyone and their dog could see something cataclysmic was about to go down. Everyone, except Francis. Oh, that's the subject, eh, sir? He said. What? Did she cheat on you or something? Having it away with the milkman on the side? At that, Broughton exploded, standing up so violently from his chair that his desk shifted a bit. He then marches down one of the rows of desks towards where Francis is sat, and Francis responds by standing up, stepping into the aisle, and throwing his arms up in the air like, "Come on then," kind of way. He'd done it before, many times than I could count, and it always ended with the teacher backing down, and Francis firmly being king of the classroom. Not this time. Both of Broughton's massive rugby player hands shoot up and wrap themselves around Francis's throat. The choking sound he set out was honestly terrifying, like a sharp, constricted attempt at inhalation that just came out as a gargle. The entire class gasped as Francis threw a punch in Broughton's direction, but his reach was nothing compared to the teacher's, and his swings missed wildly as he turned increasingly red in the face. I thought Broughton might throw a punch back for a second, but he didn't.
5 ace.
Instead, he drags Francis just a few feet toward one of the windows.
5
These
ace
are
8.
the kind that don't open up horizontally like a door. They're the kind that open vertically with just a crack, if that makes sense.
5 ace 8 queen.
Safety windows so a kid couldn't just fall out, but with an angry
Five
teacher
ace eight
forcing a
queen
kid
10.
towards the opening, there was still enough room for a kid to be thrown out, which
5
is
8 ace
exactly what
queen 10.
Broughton appeared to be doing. He was forcing Francis's head towards the opening, pinning him down on the windowsill before forcing his head into the opening. Through a combination of choking and struggle, Francis had barely made a sound as the entire class just sat back and watched in horror. But as soon as his head was out the window, and he's looking down 3 stories at a concrete playground, his attitude changed completely. "Sir, please, I'm sorry. Sir, no." If anyone had been about to speak up, hearing Francis talk in a way that sounded utterly terrified, it stunned everyone into silence. It was like seeing a unicorn or something you never, ever expected to see with your own eyes. A scared Francis seemed like a complete oxymoron, a total impossibility, right up until that moment. "Tell me I wouldn't be doing the world a favor," Broughton said. He was angry that his voice was cracking as he screamed. "Go on, tell me. Tell me who'd be sad if I just dropped you." At least a third of Francis's upper body is jammed out the window at that point. His legs are flailing, kicking at the chairs and desks behind him, and for one hot minute, I think everyone believed Mr. Broughton was actually going to drop Francis out the windows. And only then did they speak up. Kids were telling each other to go get the head, begging the teacher to leave it and let him go. But Broughton was just deaf to their pleas and continued to berate Francis as he forced him further and further out the window. It was only when Broughton once asked again, like, "Who's going to miss you?" and Francis responded with something along the lines of, "My mom. She'll be on her own. Please, Mom. Mom." Hearing the hardest kid in our year literally begging for his mother, that disturbed me in a way that nothing else ever really has. In the end, when all is said and done and you're staring death in the face, it really is your mom that you think of last. Fortunately for Francis, I think that was the one thing that saved him, and you could sense the shift in Broughton's demeanor almost instantly. A few seconds later, he was dragging Francis back into the safety of the classroom, but instead of carrying on the fight, Francis ran out of the classroom, clearly crying, screaming about how your job for this. And to foreign readers, this just implied that he was going to get him sacked, not that Francis was literally about to take over as English. I'm sure it'll be a surprise to no one to hear that Broughton ended up losing his job. But we also found out why he'd reacted so violently. And that's because his wife, the same one Francis had so flagrantly disrespected, had recently been diagnosed with cervical cancer. And I'm pretty sure it was terminal. I'm not saying he wasn't out of order for kicking off on a student like that. But at the same time, I can understand why that was the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. I think it was the same for my parents, too. Like, once they heard about Broughton getting the sack for almost murdering a student, they went into overdrive trying to find a decent school for me to prep for my exams. I left that school less than 2 months after that incident, and did a few weeks homeschooling while my parents petitioned the council for an emergency placement. It worked. I got out, and the rest is history, I suppose.
2, 9, 10,
But I still
queen.
think of state secondary school teachers from time to time, how some of them must be living an actual nightmare on a day-to-day basis,
6,
and
9,
how
10,
fortunate
queen.
I am that I don't have to do the same thing.
2, 8, 9,
biggest
10,
problem
queen.
is that I attract the weirdest kinds of people. There are a lot of people who say that, but you have no idea until you've met some of the people that try to hang out with me. There was one guy who took the cake, though. His name was Jonathan. He lived down the road from my parents' house. This was years ago, and thankfully I hadn't had anything to do with him in a very long time. I was your average-looking girl. I was in high school at the time, and I was extremely naive. I've had a couple of really bad experiences. I've kind of been shown the true horror of the world firsthand. Not trying to turn this into a pity party or anything, but you don't realize how cruel the world is until horrible things happen to you. And if you were idealistic about people the way I was, you just have to live through some bad experiences to find out. But anyway, back when I was a sophomore in high school and extremely naive about people and their intentions, I was friends with Jonathan. I thought that he was kind of a nerdy guy, but that he was capable of being a friend. Bear in mind, he was a 30-year-old who lived with his grandmother who collected Social Security. He didn't have a job, didn't have a girlfriend, and he thought it was a good idea to hang out with a girl in high school that lived down the street. That's the kind of guy Jonathan was. I wasn't really close with my parents, so they didn't really know anything about who I hung out with. I didn't hang out with Jonathan very much, but I would say hi to him and have the occasional conversation from time to time. Looking back, I knew that he had some kind of crush or romantic feeling for me, but I knew that it would be against the rules for him to date me, and I knew that he knew that too. But I remember when I got my first boyfriend,
King
Jonathan
8.
was not exactly happy about it. He kept warning me about being used by boys my
King
age.
8, queen.
He told me that I should look for an older man who was more mature and could take care of me. Of course, he was
King 8,
always
queen 10.
hinting that I should have been with him. He didn't want to come out and say it though. But
Damn
every
it.
single time I ever talked about my
King 8,
boyfriend,
queen 10.
who had only been dating for 2 weeks or so, Jonathan always had something bad to say or some kind of warning. I remember getting the whole possibly catching something from him talk from my parents, only to get it again from Jonathan. I specifically remember the way he phrased the conversation. He talked as if though my boyfriend definitely had some sort of disease. And by the way, he didn't. It was a very strange ordeal nonetheless. But then came the day before our field trip. It wasn't a big trip or anything. My school was divided into certain sections, and it was an annual event where the science department would take certain sections of students down to the park and help us scientifically observe nature. For 3 days, the scientific department would take a third of the students down this park. It was pretty stupid. Everyone kind of agreed that it was just a nice way to get out of those horrible classrooms that we sit in all day. Outside Science Day, that's what we called it. I remember Jonathan asking about Outside Science Day. He asked what day I was going to be in the park. I told him, and I was scheduled to go on Wednesday. I didn't think anything of it. After all, he did go to the same high school I went to, and it was kind of a tradition. I thought that he was just kind of curious or reminiscing. Well, was I wrong? Wednesday came, and I was really excited to be going down to the park. I was hanging out with my best friend Rebecca. We got down there and started observing nature. Teachers made me bring notepads and pencils to make some scientific observations, but after a few sentences, they didn't care what we did after that. The teachers sat by the picnic tables and drank lemonade, and us students were pretty much free to do whatever we wanted. Me and Rebecca were having a deep conversation about life. She said something about her stepfather and how it made her feel like marriage was a bad idea or something. I don't really remember, it was a very long time ago. I just remember being 100% engaged in this conversation with Rebecca. And all of a sudden, I felt a hand touch my shoulder. I thought it was one of my friends playing a joke on me or something, but I turned around and it was Jonathan. Things got extremely awkward really fast. Me and Rebecca were kind of in the middle of it. He was my awkward older neighbor showing up at my school class trip. Jonathan asked me if I wanted to go back with him to hang out at his house for a little while. I told him that I would get in trouble, but he promised that the teachers would never find out. By this point, I knew exactly what he was doing, and I wasn't about to play into that. I told him that I couldn't leave my best friend Rebecca, but then he offered to bring Rebecca too, and that was even creepier. I remember getting a look from Rebecca like, why do you know this freak?
Sloppy at
Jonathan
88,
kept
King
pleading
Deuce
with us,
5.
me and Rebecca finally decided to just walk back to our teachers and hope that Jonathan would get the hint. But when we started walking through, Jonathan grabbed me. He grabbed me by the ankle and I fell to the ground. We were standing on wood chips and I remember getting some in my mouth when I fell. He started dragging me. We were far enough from the teachers that they couldn't see us easily, and our view was mostly obstructed from the rest of the students by a swing set. So nobody noticed that this grown man was dragging me away. I lucked out in the end. Rebecca actually started fighting him. She punched him in the nose and started screaming for the teachers. Right after she did that, Jonathan started running. He ran as fast as I've ever seen anyone run away in my life. I didn't realize how quick he actually was. The teachers asked about the incident and questioned me as to whether or not I knew this man. I told them that I didn't. It turned into a giant headache. They called the police and everything. I told the police that it was just a stranger, and then I was as vague as I could be when I described him. For some reason, I felt like I would get in trouble if they knew it was Jonathan. Now, I understood that I should have reported him to the police, but I foolishly didn't at my naive age. The experience turned into a good thing for Rebecca, too. She always bragged about punching a grown man in the face and him running away. I was pretty sure that Jonathan was running because he didn't want the teachers to see him, and not because Rebecca's punch necessarily hurt him. But I never told Rebecca that. After that incident, Jonathan never showed his face anywhere near me ever again. I think he was familiar enough with my schedule that he knew when I got on and off the bus, and he just stayed away from me. That was the first time in my life that I was faced with this sort of dark reality. The sad reality that someone who claimed to be my friend actually had very dark and sinister intentions all along. And
Oh,
two
that's where I was
eyes
trying to
could
get
see
the
me.
cards.
If you're like me, do yourself a favor and be more cynical about people. At least that way, the only surprises will be good ones.
Interesting, I lost the 10 entirely.
The weird thing about dating someone with a mental illness is that they can seem like an otherwise normal person. At least until they snap in whatever way they do. This happened to me with the girl I dated back in high school. We didn't go to the same school, though. She went to our neighbor rival school. There was something of a friendly competition between our two schools. Believe it or not, we actually met at a football game. Anyway, I ended up dating this girl. It was sad because she was actually a really nice person, but her mental illness made her extremely unbearable. She would get into this extremely depressive and anxious mood, and then would act really strange. And it would come about from the most random stuff. I had previously been dating a girl for about 2 years, even before I was in high school, and I totally had a crush on her for a long time before that. Things ended when I found out that she had tried sleeping with one of my friends. And thankfully, my friend put bros before hoes and let me know about it immediately. But yeah, I had just stopped with that relationship, so I was in need of a good rebound. And that's where this girl comes in. We'll call her Erica. It was a few weeks after I had been single. I was at this football game just trying to pass the time. That was when I looked over and saw the perfect goth girl. She wasn't overly goth or anything. She didn't even have any piercings or tattoos that I knew of, but she gave off that vibe, if that makes any sense. I'd always been interested in girls like that, so I made eye contact with her, got her phone number, and texted her that night. The thing that really made me like her was that she played Xbox. How many times do you ever get a cute girl's number and she also plays video games? I wasn't sure if I was going to ask her out until that point, but she told me her gamer tag was Bad Chick X42, and I knew I had to go for it. I was normally more careful about vetting girls that I planned on dating, but I figured it would make for a good time. Worst case scenario, I broke up with her because I didn't like her and then I never saw her again. I tell you all this backstory so you can get a good picture of what me and Erica had going on. It was very relaxed, wasn't serious, and I never once got the idea from her that things were a big deal. She also told me that she had really bad anxiety. When she told me, I didn't think much of it. I figured that everyone gets anxious once in a while, and I had no idea how bad her anxiety actually got. I remember there being this one day when I had a field trip in my school. It was as lame as you can imagine, but it beat sitting in class. So I signed up and was looking forward to the day when it came. The night before the field trip, I didn't text Erica, which was unusual because we normally text each other every night, sometimes into the early hours of the morning. I just wasn't feeling it that night.
987.
I was kind of sad, and I just wanted to be alone and eat pizza rolls while I watched that 70s show. The next day came around, and I forgot that it was the day of the field trip. I wasn't quite dressed to walk around. I had my jeans on, but it wasn't the end of the world. Me and two of my best friends sat together on the bus and waited to get there.
987
There were about 3 or 4 buses from our school that left. It was a pretty big field trip, and I think just about everyone in my school went. Now, on to the interesting part. I saw my ex-girlfriend on the field trip. She went to my school, by the way. It was around lunchtime, and she approached me. She tried apologizing for being a bad girlfriend back in the day and tried to actually get back together with me. I wasn't a jerk toward her, but I did tell her no. I told her that I would never be able to trust her again. About a day or two later, she reached out to me again, but this time, she asked me if I knew someone. A gothic-looking girl. I guess this goth-looking girl had approached my ex-girlfriend and asked for a whole bunch of questions. I immediately knew it was Erica. I told my ex not to worry about it and that she wouldn't be hearing from this goth girl again. At this point, I felt uneasy about the whole situation. It just seemed like a really strange thing to do. Again, what me and Erica had was not very serious, and the fact that she was kind of stalking me made me feel really anxious. I only knew her for a couple of weeks at this point, and if this was what she was going to do, where is this possibly going to lead? I talked to her about it. She straight up admitted to stalking me while I was on the field trip. She said that she felt anxious about me cheating on her because I didn't text her the night before. Then she told me that she took a couple of pictures of me talking to my ex-girlfriend. She told me that she had somehow found...
Just listening to creepypastas on the internet.
I felt really anxious at this point and tried not to act shocked.
Help me pass the time.
I couldn't help but think about how much I regretted asking her for her cell phone number. And this is where things seriously got out of hand. I guess you could tell by my facial expression that I was really freaked out, and that's when she decided to threaten me. She looked me right in the eyes and said that she would kill me if I told anyone. I know what you're thinking. It doesn't sound as bad as it was. If you could see the look in her eyes when she said that to me, you would have been anxious about it too. I continued texting her and acting like nothing happened for a couple more days. She apologized and said that she gets carried away sometimes. And I gave it about a week before I just kind of straight up blocked her. She really freaked out.
Oh, the bottom
I
deal?
knew I was taking some kind
God,
of
for as
risk
much as
when
I've
I did so.
practiced it, I hope so.
I wasn't sure if she was serious when she said that she was actually going to kill me or not. I remember being really paranoid for a couple of days. She didn't
Dirty
know where I
bottom
lived,
deal.
but she knew where I
I
went
know,
to
right?
school, and she had the ability
That's how you
to
get all the
track down
ladies.
someone that she only had a picture of.
Ah, damn it.
I have no idea how she tracked down my ex-girlfriend
God
just
dang
from
it.
seeing her one time and having one picture of her. The scary part of the story is that she told me that she
Oh
would
man, this is the
end
sloppiest
my
run
life
I've ever done.
and then end herself. She sent it to me as a message, and
Wait, God,
I
no.
read it
Ah.
through email, so I'm not
Man,
sure how serious she
I'm
was
awful
about
right
it.
now.
All I know is that she is an extremely capable person. Again, just think about how much went into finding my ex-girlfriend, or even stalking me on the field trip in the beginning. You couple that level of capability with someone who is seriously
Ooh,
mentally
boy.
unhinged, and you
Man,
throw
maybe
a
my hands are
final
getting
switch
tired.
as icing on the cake, and you got yourself a real recipe for disaster. I really don't want to say anything to anyone because I know that if the word gets out, my reputation could potentially be ruined. People would think that I'd be the kind of person to run and hide and start crying at the first instance of a small goth girl threatening me. I know that's not how the situation is, but I know that's how people would react to it if they heard.
Oh,
It's been a
four,
while
third.
since I've had any form of communication with Erica. I
Oh.
blocked her email, phone number, and every social media account you can imagine. I'm just hoping that she can let sleeping dogs lie and let me live my life.
Do magic.
And as
Alright.
worried as I am about it, I still feel bad for her.
Have I done the card to box for
She
you,
is
Stefan?
that she so desperately needs.
Also, I'm fast track. Oh yeah, fast track's badass. That was a legit cold stack. Oh, I think it's a hot stack. Cold stacking is where you're trying to find the cards as you go. Yeah, you didn't know I can cold stack a deck? Or hot stack a deck? Here.
For a little background, the events of the
Let me
story
prove it, and then I'll do
take
magic for
place
Stefan.
in October.
Yeah, fast track is
In
badass.
I've always been somewhat awkward. I was never in the popular crowd and never really found my clique in high school. I've also always been pretty bad at talking to girls and or asking them out. It's not that I'm really
Okay,
nervous.
Kings on top. How many players in our Hold'em game, Buzz?
Carry on the conversation. I have a twin sister who is the exact opposite. She was always popular, had a ton of friends, and was usually in a steady relationship. She was a bit of a social butterfly, and we used to joke around about how different we were from one another. It never really
Okay,
bothered me.
after I demonstrate hot stacking for Buzz, I will do card to box for you.
Around and poking fun at each other with my sister. Fast forward to when I
4
was
players, alright.
21, right around
So if the
town.
dealer is seat number 1,
I'm
which
not
seat
sure
am I
if it was
cheating?
The constant cold weather, or the fact that my sister was hanging out with her boyfriend, but I was feeling especially lonely. I asked my sister if she would help me set up a dating profile on one of the 1,000 dating websites that are out there. We went through all of the criteria and gave it a few days to see if I got any responses. I received a few messages, but the conversations fizzled after a
Seat
few
3. Okay,
exchanges.
so straight across. Do you want me to have the kings face up or face down?
Today, I received a message from a girl who was extremely attractive and who wouldn't give me the time of day in high school. Her name was Gwen, which I very much liked because it reminded me of Gwen Stacy from the Spider-Man comics. She made talking very easy, which was awesome because I was never good at steering conversations. She laughed at my dry sense of humor
Yeah.
and always kept the conversation going. Thinking she was possibly not who she said she was, or perhaps a catfish, I asked her to video chat with me, and she complied. I was shocked when it was really her. I couldn't believe it. We talked about a lot of things, the things you ask someone when you're getting to know them and clearly interested in. She eventually told me that I was one of the nicest people she had ever spoken to, and that I was different than the other guys she had talked to
There we go,
or been
yeah.
with in the past.
I think that's right.
We eventually set up a
Oof.
plan for a
Hold on,
date.
I might have.
to meet
Oh
in
god, I
person.
goofed the cut. I'm a dumbass.
When the day came,
Alright,
I picked
so
her
hold
up,
on.
but
Damn
not
it.
from her house. She said she had to work and I could pick her up downtown.
Okay,
I didn't
so
think anything
let's
of it.
imagine
It
you didn't
just
see that last cut.
flags. We had a few drinks and then went to dinner.
There we
had
go.
plans to go to the movies after
Helps if I
dinner.
cut
As I was paying
the
the
right way.
checks, she said,
So seat, sorry, 2, seat 3, seat 4, seat 1, seat 2, seat 3, seat 4, seat 1.
She said in the bubbly voice I grew so accustomed and comfortable with, "Let's go to Blue Lakes. They have the trails there. The moonlight will be on the lake. It's so romantic and way better than any movie."
We'll do one face up with the drill I do.
Of course. But in my
So,
own mind, I like the idea
6
of the movies
seats.
because I didn't have to worry about
We'll have my Confederate at seat 6, and we'll have the Sucker at seat 4.
Lakes, which is the name of this beautiful park in my hometown. It's not actually called Blue Lakes, but because the lake has a deep blue color, everybody in town calls it Blue Lakes.
So it's kind of harder to do this with cards face up, just because, yeah, I lose my stack in the left hand because they bend the wrong way. So forgive me.
Asked her to give me some kind of advice on what to do and what to say. She didn't respond right away. Thanks, sis. There was a couple of cars in the parking lot, which was weird.
So there's my stack.
Night. I was trying to have fun.
And then I always do a fake and a cut just to get in the habit.
I'm nervous about the cars. It's probably just some couples still
Seat
celebrating
2,
Valentine's
seat
Day.
3, seat 4, seat 5, seat
grabbed my
6,
hand
seat
and
1,
started
seat
walking
2,
toward
seat
the
3,
door.
seat 4, seat 5, seat 6,
She
seat
could have
1.
said anything at this point, and I would have went along with her. She let go of my hand and walked on the trail beside the lake. She said very loudly, "Wow, look how beautiful this place is." I thought it was kind of weird how loud she said it, but again, I didn't really care. While she was staring at the water, I checked my phone to see if my sister
Okay.
texted me back, and she did. It
Famous
just said,
card to box
"It's
trick.
over there now."
I get all my jokers and other cards out of
Down,
e-box.
but not sure why.
Alright,
I looked up from my phone at Gwen. who was
so let's
standing right there
imagine
with a smile on
I
her
did an ace production for the 4 aces, and there they
face,
are.
she said in a soft voice.
So now we need a card to put inside the box. I'm going to go ahead and take this one just because I like doing flashy cuts to show off. It gets us to the Jack of Diamonds. It'd be easy enough to remember, Jack in the box, right? So Jack goes into the box, and now we need the spectator to select a card. So I just have them call stop wherever they want. Let's imagine they called stop there. Please memorize that card. In this case, you get the 7 of Diamonds.
I turned
Now,
around and tried to walk
Let's
back
give our
to the
little
trail.
Jack in the box some company. Let's we're gonna
I
let
was in the theater, not sure
Mr.
why they weren't moving
Wait,
out
is
of
that
the way.
right?
Gwen came up behind me and whispered in
Am
my
I
ear.
dumb? Yeah, I'm dumb. Hold on. God damn it. Let's imagine you didn't see that.
My friends just gone.
So we're gonna let Mr. Jack in the Box hang out with the black aces. They go into the
I'm a pretty
box.
big guy, but I couldn't
Oh
get
god, I have
over
done this so
the poor
poorly.
guys.
No, I have not.
They held me down.
And so the remaining aces are going to find your card. We'll call them Ace Ventura Card Detective. The 2 aces do it just by jumping onto the deck, and they've just done it. Don't believe me? Check this out. Now there's a card between them. That card is your card. The wait, Jack of Diamonds. That's impossible because Jack in the box. What, if that's out here, what's it? Oh shit! That's a magic trick, kids.
I screamed for help,
There we go.
and the police found me tied to the tree.
Damn, we're gonna do that again.
They helped me down and began questioning me when my sister arrived. Apparently, as soon as I texted her, she had called the cops and rushed over herself. She
Alright.
was at a party.
So
and a
again,
group of guys were there
let's imagine I've just
saying they
done
were
an
going to
ace
jump some
production.
loser at Blue Lakes. They had an
Those
entire
go
plan to
there.
rob him and beat him up
I
and
take the
leave him.
card to go into the box.
My sister
We'll
had
cut to
explained
it,
them that they were
and
lying jerks
god damn it.
walked away, not
Holy
knowing
shit, would you believe it's the Jack of Diamonds?
hours later,
Mystery
they
of
texted me,
mysteries.
not taking any chances.
Jack of Diamonds goes into the box. I'll make it easy to remember. Jack in the box. Spectator picks out a card. They call stop there on the Queen of Clubs. They remember that. We don't flash the shit out of that because the angle's weird. Then we let the Jack hang out with the Queens. Or the Queens, the black aces. And then the last 2 aces. They go find your card by jumping on top of the deck.
The thing that still haunts me and bothers me to this day is the motivation for this event. Was it really worth
Boom.
all the effort to beat a broke college kid for his wallet and his car?
I like that version.
Maybe a couple
Just
of
because the time misdirection
my credit card
when their
bill.
card goes to the
It
box,
seems like a lot of
they
time
think it
for
had to
a
have happened beforehand.
4 years later, I still have nightmares of that night.
Usually gets pretty good reactions.
Even though the incident could have been worse, I still have mental scars from getting attacked by a group of strangers.
Let's see, I could do my version of color, Monty.
One of them did eventually come to justice, but there was a strong honor amongst these thieves because the authorities were never able to gather any further information out of him, and all the other individuals had sort of disappeared.
For those watching, Buzz mentioned earlier cold stacking a deck. So to cold stack a deck, what you're doing is as you shuffle, you're peeking these 2 bottom cards. So on the left hand, I have a Jack. I want to keep the Jack. That goes to the top. Oh, sorry. On the left hand, I have a Jack. That goes to the top, so that I keep it in the left hand. So now I'm just peeking the right. That's an 8. Now bear in mind, this is not something I practiced. God damn it.
In the 14 years of blissful union, John's
That's not a card I want to keep. This is why I don't like cold stacking. Okay, that's a 10. We're going to keep that. So now I've got Jack 10 on top. So let's say we have, I just took random dice, 5 players. And let's say I want to cheat. Okay, I'll do my Color Monty version. And let's say I want to cheat seat 3. So let me do my math real quick. 3. Okay, so then you have to do the stack on top of that. Wait, let me stack for myself. So 5-handed. Oh wait, I am stacking for myself. I'm a dumbass. Okay. So you're doing, unless you get super lucky, you're doing way more shuffles than you need to be, which is suspicious in and of itself. So then cut. So I don't know. Oh, actually, god damn it, I was doing that completely wrong. Okay, so hold on. I was wrong. So I just, sorry, I need to get the Jack 10 to myself. So we're 5-handed. Okay. So yeah, I just need 2 more shuffles to do that then. Okay. So boom, 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 boom. That should get the Jack 10 suited. So what most card cheats do is called hot stacking. So give the deck an actual cut, actual shuffle, which almost feels weird at this point. So let's say there's all the cards that hit the table from the previous hand. I see the pocket aces and I see the queens. So now I gather everything up. I see the king-queen suited.
Paramedics were called to the scene, but Susan couldn't be revived.
I actually did that wrong. It need to be in that order. Okay, fine. So now I've got the king-queen suited on top, the aces underneath, and so now I know my stack. So we're gonna have my confederate. Actually, fuck it, we'll just have 6-handed, and we'll cheat for myself.
So severe that parts of her brain were exposed, while her face was completely unrecognizable. To his absolute horror, Dr. John Hamilton was the #1 suspect in his wife's murder from the very beginning. Police have since publicly stated that there were many factors which led them to such a conclusion. The first
So seat 2, seat 3, seat 4, seat 5, seat 6, seat 1, seat 2, seat 3, seat 4, seat 5, seat 6, seat 1.
It was also a crime in which nothing of value was stolen.
That's way more consistent.
There were no bloody fingerprints left in the bathroom which had blood almost.
Yeah, it's way more consistent. And you have the opportunity to put good cards into your opponent's hand, just not quite as good as yours. Okay, Color Monty.
On top of that, while searching the home, police got their hands on the Valentine's Day.
How's the volume mixing, by the way, though? Can you guys hear me well enough over creepypastas?
Wasn't nearly as loving and cheerful as you might imagine. I bought this 2 weeks ago, so I guess maybe
Let's go to this camera.
it's too far.
So let's talk about the game 3-Card Monty. You may know the game even if you don't know it by name. You usually see it played on the streets in somewhere like New York where you got 3 bent cards, and it's follow the red card, and yeah, everybody knows this game. So this is the standing version just because I don't like bending my cards. But the rules are very much the same. We have 3 cards and 2 what are called dead cards that need to be identical. I just use jokers because you get 2 jokers in every deck, and then you have the aforementioned money card. In this case, the Queen of Hearts, the red card. Rules are the same. All you have to do to win the game is follow the red card. Can you do that for me? Alright. The first move's super easy. Queen goes to the bottom. Where's the queen? So you might say the bottom, but that's actually a joker there. So the queen is going to either be on top or in the middle. I'm going to help you out. It's not on top. That's a joker. So does the queen have to be? So you think the middle, but that's also a joker. Now what you should have said was the bottom. That's where the queen was. And that's why you don't play this game. The operator is always in control. And a good operator wants you to win the money early, so you start betting more money. So had you called the bottom, I could have shown you the queen there. Had you been a smartass and called the top, I could have shown the queen there. Had you been a smartass and called the middle, I could have shown the queen there. And that's before it starts going, or before it goes back to being all jokers once you start betting the real money. So I'm going to help you one more time. I'm going to set up a situation where you can't help but win. We're going to take this card on top, a joker, we're going to turn that face up, we're going to turn the queen face up. All you have to do to win is tell me what this card is. A joker? No, that's a 2, sorry. You lose again.
Just because I've heard stories about people getting mugged around here. But I arrived to the pound only a bit late and send her a message apologizing as I get in.
Ooh, I had this idea the other day.
Instantly almost. Shoot, she says. I get a chance to message you.
Don't know if I can
There's a bunch of guys
do
here
it.
for some
This deck is
furniture.
getting a little old and sticky,
Being really rowdy.
so I don't know how good my reverse fan's going to be.
Laid out in an area that was surrounded by a quarter-mile
So-
worth of greenery.
Yeah.
Those that ventured down there were likely to find
Start with
collections of beer
fan.
bottles,
Kaboom.
cigarette butts strewn among the trees.
Let them pick a card. Say they get that one.
Exactly
It's the
kind
2 of
private,
spades.
out-of-the-way place the two young lovebirds might need to go to get a
Here.
little alone time. Patricia's wanting
Take you
curfew
2.
came and went,
It goes there.
friends back in the girls' dorm assumed she'd sneak back in at some point on her tiptoes, yet little did they know that they'd never see her or her boyfriend.
Yeah, I don't know if I can do a reverse fan here. You might have to just imagine I did a reverse fan.
Returned from her date with Jessie.
Oh, there we go.
This was the first time the young
Almost.
woman had ever broken her dormitory curfew, and those close to her were quickly beginning to worry. They knew Patricia to be a deeply mature and responsible young woman who always played by the rules and took authority seriously. And to their knowledge, Jessie
What did I
was
do
an
here?
effective,
Oh, I think I did this one.
respectful boyfriend, one
So-
that Patricia seemed very much in love with. But not even youthful romance would be able to make the young nursing student break curfew.
There it is.
Slowly but surely, as the day progressed, the concern of Patricia's roommates went from mild to grave. What started with a few questions turned to them calling around local hospitals in case they'd been in a car accident. They then filed a
See, I wanted to get the idea of the whole deck turning blank and then the card turning blank.
were still so anxious that they began to physically search for their missing roommate on foot. They roamed the surrounding area, canvassed her usual hangout spots around town and on campus, until someone had the idea to go search the Lover's Lane over at the housing development. It was here that the searchers would find Jessie's empty car parked in one of the quieter spots on the development. The car was locked, and on the back seats there were 2 warm coats, presumably belonging to Jessie and Patricia. There was no damage to the car. Everything about the scene seemed perfectly in order, except of course for the fact that the last 2 people who traveled
Oh,
seemed
sorry,
to have
you gotta
vanished
definitely cover that
into
angle as you
the
do
air.
the deck turnover. So you're
At
gonna
this
point
point,
at their
local
eyes.
police have informed
And then, I
me
mean, you
that
could
Jessie
also do
and
just a
Patricia
snap
and
change
their
here.
children are missing. At first, all
If you don't want to do
involved
the
assumed
visual
idea
instant
that the
change.
couple's disappearance was nothing more than a misguided but romantic attempt to elope, to skip town, get
And
hitched,
follow up,
and
you can
settle
take
down
the
somewhere
blank
new.
card, put on
But
top, have them call
investigators
stop
quickly
somewhere.
began to realize
Let's
that
say they
there
call
was
stop
something
on the 5 of
distinctly
diamonds. Remember that
suspicious
card,
about
don't
this.
forget it.
There
Okay, let's
appeared to be
imagine that
no
didn't
reason
suck.
for either Jessie or
Blank card on
Patricia to
top.
inform anyone of their plans, or even close friends.
4
And
of
the idea
hearts.
that neither would at least leave a note or letter to a relative seemed highly unlikely. Over time, those closest to Patricia began to assume the worst. I just got the sickest feeling in my stomach, said a cousin of Patricia's. I just knew something terrible had happened. For 2 weeks after they were declared missing, a team of police officers and local volunteers
Try that
mounted
again.
an intensive search of the surrounding area.
Oh, the deck turning blank and then the card turning blank? Yeah, I'm definitely a fan.
They followed up lead after lead and tip after tip, but
Well, there's something you can do with the,
hide nor hair of Jessie or Patricia.
say they
With
got
frustration
these 6 of
mounting, police
diamonds.
decided to widen the range of the search area and enlist the help of helicopter support and specifically trained forensic divers. But in the end, it was the misfortune of a surveyor in nearby Orange County that provided the police with their most important lead. On February 25th, 1971, a full 12 days after Jessie and Patricia went missing, Robert Kirby is walking along a dirt road in the backwoods of Orange County, North Carolina, when something catches his eye. Among the trees, maybe 50 meters or so off the trail, the surveyor...
Man, I busted out. The other day I had a
limb of a man
suit and vest on. and I was digging around with just the most simple mystery card plot of all time. So, card goes out, goes in your pocket, and because I saw Cameron do this, although he did it with the center deal because fuck him. So, do me a favor, hold out your fuck my life. Do me a favor, oh fuck. Do me a favor, hold out your hand, reveal the mystery card to everyone, and there it is. Wow, god, yeah, I gotta change out decks. This deck's done. Jesus, my top change is better than this. I know it is.
Larger rope could be wrapped around them. Once their killer had secured them in place, he began to torture them. Jesse's ear and mouth were both found to have blood in them, and a variety of large and small abrasions to his lips and forehead suggested he was beaten senseless before he was killed. At some point, Jesse and Patricia's killer had ripped their eyelashes off before continuing to savagely beat them. Then, when whoever had tied them up had grown tired of beating them, they wrapped rope collars around their necks, using a kind of knot that could be repeatedly tightened over and over again. We can only assume that the killer used these rope collars to slowly choke the life out of Jesse and Patricia.
I've got to get you on one of these live streams. What are you doing at noon your time tomorrow? You should come on the live stream. If you're ever free, just like yell at me and then hop into Discord. I've got a Discord scene set up. I will do a live stream with you.
Still wearing an expensive wristwatch and a class ring his body was found. Patricia was also wearing jewelry, and her purse was left back in the abandoned car. Their deaths were not part of some robbery.
So I think I showed you the my version of Back in Time, the tabled version the other day. Did I? Steph?
Were there any signs of indecent assault on Patricia? She had a great deal of bruising around her face and neck, but nothing below the waistline. There was no ulterior motive. All their killer had wanted to do was torture and kill. The investigation that followed was severely hampered by different agencies' complete lack of collaboration. For example, the FBI seemed to consider the local sheriffs as frankly beneath them, and a feeling of contempt quickly grew between the two groups. Everybody worked on the case as individuals, as Detective Tom Horn once put it. Not a lot of information
Okay, so
was being shared by the
I
various
go from
agencies,
that
and
into
the rivalry was tremendous.
kind of an ACAN type thing. So, do the Ellis loading move. There's your card. You can go fuck my life. I've got to switch out decks. This deck is terrible at this point. Alright. So, there's the king. You can be the one to push it into the deck. They do so. Now, you don't know exactly where it is, but you know it's somewhere near the middle. So we're going to try and fix that with a few shuffles. Even a cut. Alright, so I'm going to start dealing down onto the table. I just want you to call stop whenever the spirit moves you. Ready? Oh god, trying to strike second deal with this deck is going to be an adventure. Yeah, oh god, yeah, there comes like a whole pack out. That's what they call stop there.
And as a result, the case quickly went cold. 43 years later, in 2014, Detective Tim Horn was still working for the Orange County Sheriff's Department when a cousin of Patricia's, Carolyn Spivey, contacted him with some fresh information regarding her cousin's murder. Along with his partner at the time, Detective Horn opened up the previously closed case file, poring over old statements.
I do actually have to cut the stream off about 10 minutes early today. Stop. You get the idea. It's compact, it works, looks fair. Although I guess you could do the, so this one, call stop, they see it. You could do that one too. There we are.
A man Patricia had actually known that had murdered her and her boyfriend, Jesse. When the presentation was finished, what followed was a prolonged silence. To all in attendance, Tom Horn's hard work had presented them the best opportunity
and then just bottom deal to it.
Persisted for almost half a century. They had their suspect. They had evidence. Now it was time to make their move. Using what's known as MVAC, Detective Horn was able to extract the DNA sample from the knotted ropes used to tie up and strangle Jesse and Patricia. An MVAC is basically a wet vacuum DNA collection system that is designed to extract strands of DNA from difficult-to-reach places. Places just like the fibrous fold.
Okay, so before I cut stream, I'll do the so I do this thing where I'll come out, I'll have the audience just call stop wherever they want. Let's say they call stop on that one. 3 of hearts, call stop wherever you want. There, 3 of hearts, 9 of clubs. 3 of hearts, 9 of clubs, 5 of hearts. And then, so 3 of clubs, 9 of hearts, 3 of spades. So we have a 4 cards selected. And I come back, and at the beginning I introduced a blindfold. I have spectator come up and blindfold me. And see. I forget how I went about finding all of them. I think the first one I did that to show the 3 of hearts. The second one we do fancy ass cut. To show the 9. What was the next card? Oh, good, the 5. And then for the last one, see, I think we did. Oh, there's where we did the fancy cut. Here we'll just do normal cut. And we show that it's the 5. They say it's not the oh, sorry. Do the fancy cut, and then we deal it. Fuck my life. Then we deal it to the table. We deal it to the table, reveal it to be a 5, which is not their card. You serious? And then show that it's the 3. That usually got some pretty good reactions. Go through the sequence again. First one. Kala! So there's card number 1. Card number 2, we just go with a basic cut. We show that we've in fact got the 3 of spades. What's the next card? Got that one. And for the last one we do the... Yeah, you gotta be able to do your cuts blindfolded, but meh. And then we show that it's whatever that is. I've got my eyes closed. They say it's not. Now it is.
Because of this, I was walking behind them, distracted in my own world. After we had finished shopping, we exited through the main doors, which were the most crowded. And just as we were crossing the street to go into the park,
For those watching and interested, that is called a top change. Good use for the top change. Oh, Cal, I'm about to post first color change to the Patreon as soon as I get done here, so it'll be live.
At the time, I didn't really know what was going on. I just thought it was weird in a sort of funny kind of way. Why is this guy grabbing me? As I remembered, I thought he just got confused and grabbed me by accident, thinking I was his son.
So, use for the top change. They select, oh sorry, you take out a prediction card that you don't show. Yeah, color changes are awesome. So there's our prediction card. They select a card. I don't know what this is. Obviously, it's the 3 of spades. You pick up the prediction card from earlier and I say, do me a favor, you would hold out your hand. Now show everybody what my prediction card was, and it turns out to be the 3 of spades.
They didn't really tell the cop or call mall security. They were teens, so my guess is that they didn't really know what to do. They were just happy nothing happened. As I said, this was a very crowded day. As I got older and reflected more on what happened that day, I would understand more and more the severity of the situation. I wondered what would have happened if my cousin hadn't heard me calling him that enormous multitude that was crossing the street with us. I wasn't even shouting out at the top of my lungs. I just called out her name rather calmly. I was probably very lucky that day. But later that year, a kid was kidnapped in the local park. It was a very famous case that made headlines.
Oh, 11:51. Yeah, gotta cut the stream here short. I got family time at noon. I'll catch you